What's going on, everyone? This is Courtney Rollins, host of the Life and Transitions Experts podcast and owner of Estate Pro Service, where we help families with probate and estate planning resources while helping folks generate income and wealth, usually through real estate. And here we're committed in this channel to helping people connect to other practitioners who are doing just that, helping people with some of the biggest transitions in their life. And today I'm super excited to have Michael Salazar. Am I saying your last name right?
Yeah, you can say it any way you want. I usually say Salazar, but whatever works.
Salazar, yeah. Well, let me say, make sure I say it right. Michael Salazar, who is from Trust and Wills, an awesome online resource that we're going to chat about. You'll learn about. I actually uh, am also I benefit from this service. My wife and I recently signed up for the services and have been able to have a comprehensive estate plan help us make sure that our legacy is in place and to give us some reassurance at night. So I want to welcome you, Michael. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you allowing me to be on the show.
Man, well, I appreciate you. I know you guys are doing some amazing things over there at Trust and Wheels. If you guys haven't checked it out, or if you haven't heard of it, you definitely check it out. Trustandwills.com. Check out the thousands of reviews from folks who have worked with them in the past, and perhaps you may be someone that in the future will work with them. But Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about Trust and Wills and how you actually connected with this awesome service?
Yeah, absolutely. So Trust and Will is the easiest way for American families to build their estate plan online. We exist to make estate planning more accessible for the American families that would not otherwise go meet with an attorney, or maybe a little bit reluctant to book that meeting, go into an attorney's office and create a comprehensive set of documents. So we've created an option that is, I would say, a little bit more modern for people
Mhm.
that need a plan, but it's super easy to use. We have support during the entire process. So if you need to talk to a real person, you can absolutely connect with someone in real time. And we've got education built into every single step of the process. Now, one thing that I think that most people really like is that we're going to put you where you need to be, right? We're not going to force you to draft legal language, right? You're not going to be filling out a template. You're really just going to be going through answering one question at a time, and we'll help you build the plan that's right for you. So that's what we're doing here at Trust and Will. We've helped over 600,000 families create their estate plan at this point, which is pretty amazing. We've got a long
Yeah.
way to go if we want to close the gap in terms of who does have a plan versus who does not still have a plan. But we're making some really great progress to help ensure that more families have that peace of mind.
Do you happen to know, like, are there any numbers out there of the amount of people who don't have a proper estate plan in place in the US?
Yeah, so there's a ton of studies on this. Most of them
Mhm.
say usually about 60 to 65% of families never end up getting anything in place. Which when you first hear it sounds pretty shocking, but then you think about, all the American families that are out there and saying, "Hey, a lot of these families don't have $5,000 to go spend on an attorney today," right? So usually around 60% is what we're hearing. But then when you take into account all the families that have plans that are maybe out of date, they don't
Oh
reflect their
wow,
current
yeah.
situation, or out of date in terms of saying, "Hey, the state law or a federal law has changed." That number is probably closer to about 75, 80%, if I had to estimate.
Yeah, I one of the ways that I find properties is by helping people going through the probate process. Would you mind sharing with folks what probate is and why it may be something they want to avoid and maybe some of the tools that Trust and Wills may be able to support them with to avoid probate?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're watching this, maybe you've experienced probate yourself, if you've lost someone close to you and they've
Yeah.
passed away without a trust in place. But probate is going to be a necessary process if somebody passes away with a will and no trust, or without any type of estate planning document at all. And that it's the post-death process of collecting all the information about somebody's estate, paying off any debts or taxes that may be owed, and then ultimately letting a judge, the court, decide where your assets are going to end up, right? They're basically deciding for you what is your legacy going to be. And that can be kind of a scary thought, especially if you pass away without any sort of will. Because during probate, the will is going to function sort of like a suggestion list of, hey, these are my wishes. This is what I would want. A judge is going to review that. They're going to make sure that the will is valid, signature, notarization, all of that good stuff. But one thing to note is that that's the type of situation where people can come out of the woodwork, as they say,
Mhm.
as you might hear about in movies, films, or some documentaries of people coming out and saying, "Hey, I was promised this," or "I was promised that," and being able to contest it.
Wow.
So through probate, just know that you can have a suggestion list, you can have wishes, doesn't guarantee they're going to be followed. And the only way to really avoid that in most states is going to be to set up a trust. Here at Trust and Will, we offer a revocable living trust that's going to avoid the probate process altogether. It's going to keep your information private. So, information about your assets will not become public record. And it's going to ensure everything is transitioned to the next generation or to whatever organization that you want to support as easily as possible.
I agree. Yeah, so three things that I usually I've experienced and see folks that I work with experience in probate. It's usually very lengthy. It is a public process, and it can be very expensive with the fees and depending on the size of the estate. And having more control with legal instruments like a trust or revocable trust or other instruments in place really helps you keep your family legacy intact. I heard, I think Bill Gross said, or someone shared that going through probate is like having a civil case against your family while you've passed away,
Hmm.
based on the laws of the land. So, and one of the myths that I hear that you just kind of addressed is that having a will, a lot of people who actually taken the step to actually have a last will and testament, that's a great to be able to take that step, but it doesn't let you avoid probate. In fact, you have to probate the will. Um, what other myths do you come across um, that people may not be aware of when it comes to trust, or not trust, but when it comes to estate planning?
Yeah. So one thing I want to touch on before we switch over to estate planning is staying on probate real quick. I love what you
Yeah,
said
yeah.
about saying, hey, this is a process that is really time consuming, usually like 12
Mhm.
to 18 months. It's very expensive and it's very stressful. I hear a lot, oh, I'm just gonna set up a will because probate isn't that bad in my state, right? I'm okay passing away without a will. Setting up a trust is one of the most selfless things that you can do,
It
even
is.
though it may not necessarily benefit you while you're still here. It's going to make the process a whole lot easier for the people that you really care about, and take that stress, take that financial burden off their shoulder. So that's just something I wanted to address because I love what you said there about those three main pain points. And something that I hear often is, hey, probate's not that bad in my state. Well, it's going to help a lot more if we set up a trust. Um,
Absolutely.
and then going in terms of like demystifying certain things around estate planning, I think that's one thing that Trust and Will is doing a really great job at is through education, we're able to help people understand that estate planning isn't just for really wealthy people or for
Oh, next
really,
question. Yeah.
people that are nearing the end of their lives. Because traditionally, that's kind of who it's been for, who it's been accessible to, right? $5,000 to set up a trust with an attorney. Well, I'm only going to do that if I have, a lot of assets, or I'm only going to do that towards the end of my life. Uh, in reality, if you have a kid, if you have a spouse, if you own your home, if you own a small business, you got to be sure that you're protecting it, and that you have the control over what your legacy is really going to be. We're seeing a lot more millennials and a lot more Gen Z members join Trust and Will in order to establish peace of mind earlier on in their life, take their first swing at this earlier during their financial journey. And for a lot of these people, it's probably not going to be the plan that they have when they do pass away, if they live long and healthy lives, but it's really going to provide them with a ton of peace of mind today.
That I love that you said that peace of mind and being able to control legacy because I recently read an awesome book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? And we won't go into the awesome techniques of infinite banking and things of nature. But what really struck out to me that speaks to this conversation is how you actually, with a trust, you really can dictate to a certain extent how you want your legacy to move on to go on. So you can. So right now, I'm literally writing out Courtney Rollins' manifesto that I will be able to present and put into my trust that you helped us set up. And it is not that I'm trying to have specific restrictions, but I would love for my great grandkids to hear what, or my great great grandkids to hear what are some of the values that our family has and some of the principles that we stand on based on what we are able to exercise in the trust.
Yeah.
So I think that is an amazing thing there, and it is also. I'm so glad that you mentioned also that this isn't just for the extremely wealthy. You know, wealth can be measured in different ways, but if you are focused on protecting your legacy and protecting wealth and generating wealth in the future, it's one of the most selfless. And I love the way you presented things you can do
Mm.
is establish your estate plan. Can you mention some of the tools we already talked about a trust, and maybe you could go into what that is, but also some of the other components. Um, 'Cause that was one thing I was so excited about when I actually saw what was provided for really a fraction of what you or a smaller percentage of what you mentioned earlier as far as
Mhm.
the 5,000. But what are some of the components of an estate plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So when most people think estate planning, they think of the two words that are on my shirt, right? Trust and will.
Yeah.
We already talked about a will, what it is. It's more of a suggestion list. You can write out your wishes, wishes for final arrangements, nominate a guardian for your minor children. Uh, a trust is a little bit more of a complex document. Think of it as like an agreement between the person who's created the trust and their successor trustee. That's the person who's going to act in their best interest once the person who created the documents has passed away. And it's an agreement to say, hey, here is exactly what I want my financial legacy to be. You are responsible for ensuring that assets are distributed from my estate or from my trust exactly as this is written. So it really is a written agreement between you and the person that you select as your successor trustee. Like we said, it's going to avoid probate. It's going to make sure everything's passed along as seamlessly as possible. What I love about Trust and Will compared to other platforms that have kind of come and gone in the past is that we only sell documents as comprehensive packages. We're not going to put clients or members in a position where they have to select or unselect documents. It sounds kind of funny, but we're going to force you to create everything that you need and everything that you don't know that you need. This is going to include HIPAA authorization.
Mhm.
So it makes it really easy for the people listed in that form to be able to receive information about the medical care that you are receiving in the event where you can't authorize that release of information yourself. It also allows for different medical providers to share information with each other in the event where you need to be maybe transferred to a new facility. Another form would be the Advanced Healthcare Directive or the Healthcare Proxy. That's where you're going to assign a medical power of attorney. So you're going to be able to decide which person is going to be able to step up and make decisions on your behalf based off what you have outlined in that document in the event where you're incapacitated and you can't make that decision for yourself.
Right.
So you can really outline, hey, if I'm in this state, here is the type of care that I would like to receive,
Oh wow.
person to
And
represent.
okay. Oh, you said with state, you're talking about like state, like your physical being. That's okay. Okay. Okay.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay. Awesome.
And then the other one is the personal power of attorney. That's going to be for personal or financial matters in the event where you become incapacitated or go missing, saying, "Hey, I basically want to have someone to represent me to be able to step up, pay any taxes, pay my bills, right? Handle my personal and financial matters if I'm not in a state where I can do it." So, with those three documents that I just reviewed, you may notice something, and it's that those documents can only impact you while you're still alive,
Right. Wow.
which is funny because most people think estate planning, they think, okay, this is a plan that I'm creating for what happens after I pass away. A majority of the documents in the estate plan won't matter after you pass. So it really is peace of mind, not only for your legacy, everything that you've worked so hard for and where it's going to end up, but it's also, hey, if I get in a situation where I can't represent myself or I can't make decisions for myself, those decisions are already made and they're right here in the plan.
That is awesome, and I want to underscore again. You said it twice, and I want to say it again because I'm really understanding the impact as Michelle and I completed our estate plan. That these documents aren't just, hey, you can select this when you sign up with Trust and Wills, which is to me very affordable,
Mhm.
but it's there. So like I had to, and thank goodness, sit down and think about, okay, who is going to be in line if if I do become incapacitated. We're all temporarily abled bodies, and God willing, nothing ever, challenging happens to me or to Michelle or to you that's listening. But being able to prepare for that does provide peace of mind, and being able to have resources that I didn't even know that I need to have is pretty awesome. Now, there was another component though, and can you explain to me, because I did also fill out a living will. Can you just
Mhm.
explain to the person listening what a living will is, how that relates to the the plan?
Yeah, yeah. So this is something that's actually I think sometimes a little bit confusing. The living will is another term for that advanced healthcare directive or the health.
Oh, okay.
So the I love the term living will. It's not, I don't think it's as well known as like healthcare directive or healthcare proxy, but I love the
Right.
term because it's saying, hey, while I'm living, what are my wishes?
That makes
Right?
sense.
To say, hey, in the event where, I become incapacitated, I can't make a decision for myself, here is what I want. One of the most famous examples of this that we see often in pop culture, of course, it does happen in real life, but pull the plug or not, right? If I'm in a
Mm.
state where there is no path to recovery, how long should you keep me alive, or is there a point in time where the plug should be pulled, as people say? And that's a really tough decision for someone to make. I think it's something that people will get hung up on when they're creating their documents, either with us or with an attorney, to say, wow, if I was in that state where there was no path to recovery, what would I want to happen, and who is going to be the person that's ultimately responsible for making that call, basically just validating my wish.
Right.
It's really tough to think about, especially when you consider that there's someone on the other end of that decision, right? That's going to
Mm.
need to actually authorize that. So that's a conversation that I've had with the person that I have listed as my medical power of attorney, is to say, hey, this probably won't happen. I want you to understand what your role is, and just know
Mm.
that if this situation does come up, you are not doing this to me. This is a decision that
Wow.
I've made for myself, and I trust you enough to be able to go through with it when that time comes, or if
Well,
that time comes.
so are you obligated? I'm pretty sure it's a good idea, but are you obligated to tell the person that you may have put down as these different, heavy roles? I mean, obviously, I mean, it's a good idea, but is that
Yeah.
something? Do you know about that? Is that something you're obligated to do
So
legally? I should-
you're not obligated legally to do it or make them aware of the role that they fill in your estate plan. Personally, I think that if you're comfortable with it, it's a smart idea to have the
Right.
conversation to make sure everyone's on the same page, and that they're comfortable with it, right? Like, for example, being named as someone's successor trustee should be seen as a huge honor, but it's also a lot of responsibility,
Yeah.
right? It's a lot of responsibility to be named as someone's successor trustee. So, that specifically, I think that's a role where you should have a conversation with them, make sure they're comfortable with it, make sure they understand what the roles and responsibilities uh, of them are going to be. And we do have some resources that can help our members do that, which is pretty awesome. But if they're not comfortable with it, it's really
Mm.
good. You'll feel really good about having had that conversation and saying, okay, well, thank you for letting me know, but let's go ahead and switch this to another person, and I'll have a conversation with them first. But so there's no obligation to do it. Personally, I do it just because I work for Trust and Will, and I love the
Right.
the, the openness and making sure everyone's on the same page, right? I want to be transparent about what my plan is with the people who are going to be impacted, but there's no obligation to do it.
Right. I heard I was working with a client a while back, and she had an amazing idea that I've never heard of. She was sitting down having an estate plan party with her family, and so Auntie Jessica hears exactly what her sister wants, to go, and they sat down. And it was some transparency, so it sounds very similar to that. Have you heard of any other like really cool, or do you have any other tips for when someone's sitting down and thinking about uh, what to include, how to
Mhm.
approach this?
Yeah, I would say, it's so tough for me to say because I talk about it every day, right? But by this point, like I'm very comfortable talking about that, having a conversation about preparing for it. Um, I think one thing to remember, and maybe it's a little bit sad, but it is inevitable,
Hmm.
right? That should be your main motivator for saying, okay, I need to get this done because one day this will happen, right? I'm going to need the documents, even if it's not one of the live the living will or the POA while I'm alive. Even if I don't need those, one day I'll need a will or one day I'll need a trust. The second thing is you work really hard, right? You work really, really hard for everything that you have. I think if you're watching this right now, you're probably shaking your head. Yes, like, yes, I've worked very hard
Hmm.
for everything that I've accumulated up to this point and where I'm at. Have some peace of mind in terms of where it's going to end up. If your child is your world, you have the power to ensure that you can give them everything if you're not here one day. And I think that's a really, really big motivator. Some people have the opposite motivation where it's, hey, there's a person in my life, and I want to be sure that if I pass away, they can put a finger on it.
I
And
didn't even think about it. Yeah,
for some people, that's the motivator. And if that's what gets it done, we completely support that. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, my thing would be have an open mind and be really
Mhm.
specific, right? Specifically
Mhm.
when you're answering questions about leaving physical gifts for people. I think that's one of the more time consuming parts of this process is listing out like physical items that you want to be passed to people, like art, jewelry, furniture, family heirloom, stuff like that. Be really specific, make it really, really easy for the people who are going to have to be responsible for distributing it, but also just avoid any confusion, right? On saying, like, hey, I want to give my son my car. Well, are you talking about the Corvette, or are you
Right.
talking
Oh
about
wow.
your Matchbox car collection that's been collecting dust? So, kind of a little bit of a different tone there, but always try to be as specific as possible too. That's just a nice little tip that I like to remind people of.
I appreciate that. And one thing you told Michelle and me as well, and you said actually earlier too, is to recognize, especially, well, really at any stage, that this thing can grow. That what I put in place a month ago may be different 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now as life changes, family changes. So I appreciate um, that. How often do you suggest people take a look at the things that they have in place once they've set up everything?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think every 1 to 2 years, you should take
Hmm.
a quick look at what your plan is and if any changes are needed. Um,
Okay.
that I would say maybe every other year,
Okay.
but there are some life milestones that will probably trigger the need for a change in the estate plan, like having a child or a grandchild, moving to a new state, buying or selling a home, receiving a large sum of money or an inheritance yourself. So, anytime that your family dynamic changes or your financial situation changes dramatically, those are probably good milestones to say, okay, let me go back and make sure my estate plan reflects that. One thing that Trust and Will is doing to really change the game here is we're currently beta testing summaries of a client's or a member's estate plan
Oh
that's
wow.
provided to them after. And
Very cool.
it's basically a visual breakdown of what their estate plan is. And it gives them all the important information without them having to, thumb through a 25-page document.
Hmm.
And what we're hoping this does is it allows for people to have more regular check-ins on their estate plan and see when changes are needed. I'm part of the beta test with my own personal estate plan. I checked it out yesterday. This is a real story. I checked it out yesterday. And because of that report, I realized there were things that I needed to change.
Oh wow.
I didn't have all of my financial accounts listed. I want to change the person who's listed as my digital executor. So the person who's going to be responsible for maintaining or deleting my digital accounts once I've
Oh
passed away.
wow. Yeah.
And I just want to change up the distribution of my assets to my three beneficiaries a little bit. So that type of summary that Trust and Will has now created is going to allow for American families to think of estate planning as something that's more dynamic, and that should change as soon as their life changes, and they can have more regular check-ins on that.
That's gonna be very helpful.
Mhm.
So, how long do you, when someone like sits down with Trust and Wills, what is like uh, not necessarily maybe the process, but also like how much time do you think they should say, okay, you need to make sure you set aside this amount of time to have a thorough understanding or complete the process?
Mhm. Yeah, so I'll just give like a high level overview on the process. Basically, you'll come to trustandwill.com, set up an account with an email address and a password, select your plan, either a trust based plan or a will based plan. And then you're really just going to answer one question at a time. What that does is it really keeps things light. It prevents you from feeling too overwhelmed or like you're filling out some long, complicated form. But truly, what it does is it allows for us to put you exactly where you need to be based off the information you provide and what you tell us is important to you. So we're going to put you exactly at the question you need to be at. No need to, like I said earlier, fill out a template or fill out some long form. We've got education built into every single step of the process. You always have the opportunity to learn more about these subjects that we're asking about. You can interact with our team members via live chat or by phone. And in most states, we also offer attorney support. So if you want to pay an additional fee of $200, you can get as much time as you need with one of our attorneys to be able to receive legal advice, go through the process with them, do some document review afterwards, and
Mm.
make sure everything's finalized. In terms of time, typically looking at about 30 minutes to complete a will based plan. For a trust based plan, usually looking at about 45 minutes to an hour to get all the documents set up.
Well, I can attest to that, and um, folks, I I have ADHD and I love the big picture stuff, but even for me, being able to sit down through that was so simple, so easy, and I found it uh, very informative in a way that, like you said, Michael, is not overwhelming, and that's fraction of the time that I thought it was going to take and would take. Two things though. If you do decide to use Trust and Wills, they've been so kind. I have a relationship with them with Estate Pro Service, and so if you want a discount on setting up the plan, please reach out to me. The DM me, contact me, call Courtney at estateproservice.com, and I'd love to share that with you. Even if you don't, please just go straight to them. I mean, even if you don't go through me, that's it's just such an important thing, I believe, and obviously Michael believes. And yeah, the other thing is that it did not take that long. I am literally a client as of, and it's yeah, it's it's awesome. It's awesome. Uh, One thing I want to point out, I know we're running short on time, but I just want to dig into a small little bit of weeds that I think may help folks out if they do decide to use of trust. Is that when you fund the trust, you putting your assets into the trust, marking what the trust is. Sometimes people I've heard uh, don't do the next step, and that's go to the public records or go to the registers of deeds and actually record that, hey, this trust is now titled, or this asset, this property, this car, this whatever, or bank account, whatever is titled to this trust, whatever asset you're putting in there. Can you share with folks or how you guys support that? Because that was one thing I was super excited about because I thought it was going to be like, oh, I got to go through another step outside of trust and wills. But yeah, please share. If you...
Absolutely. So once you set up a trust-based plan, the trust does need to be funded. You need to retitle accounts and do deed transfer on property if necessary. What Trust and Will does really well, and what we truly do at our core is we're a document creation company. We are creating estate planning documents, but what we've done a really great job of is being able to support our members after the plan is completed. So
Mhm.
we're going to send you next steps when it comes to, first of all, signature and notarization, making sure that these documents are legally binding and that we can validate that you were in a sound state of mind when you went ahead and created and signed these documents. The second is going to be retitling accounts. So we do provide a comprehensive trust funding guide that has specific instructions for retitling all your different accounts. We do offer a couple of different options for our members to do deed transfer online. They could go and do it directly with their local county, the way that people have been doing it for a long, long time, or they could go with one of our digital options. I'll take a moment to shout out udeed.com, the letter U, the word deed.com. Great digital option that we work with in order to make it really easy for you to do a deed transfer directly from your couch. So that's one thing that we do offer. And for anyone watching this, just know that if you run into any trouble, or if you end up using Trust and Will and you run into any trouble, or you have questions about the next steps or the instructions for trust funding, we also have a support team that's still available to help you. So if you want to shoot them an email, give them a call, or chat in on our site, they'll really be able to provide you with some clarity in terms of what the next steps are, what you need to do, and when you're at a point where you can finally say, okay, this is done. I can rest for a while. I've got peace of mind.
Man, Michael, yeah, you're super awesome, man. My last question to you, because I had a list of questions I shared with him, and I don't think I asked any of those. So you've been awesome just to answer the questions that just came out of my mind here. But what's the thing that you enjoy most about working with Trust and Wills?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I love that my work matters. I love that the work that I do every day helps families like mine. Um, because growing up, we were pretty middle class, but we never had significant assets. My dad's a small business owner, and
Mm,
no one ever talked to him about setting up a trust, or no one could ever convince him to go set up a trust. My grandma's owned her home for over 50 years, and she never had an advocate or an opportunity to say, I need to set up this home in a trust. So I love that the work that I do and the work that this company does helps families exactly like my own establish more peace of mind, have the opportunity to preserve a legacy, and then also give families the opportunity to start that process of building generational wealth. Right? So many times that process has been stopped because they pass away without a trust, they pass away without a will. The probate process gets really sloppy. All the wealth gets divided. It doesn't end up maybe where it was intended to be. We want to make sure that every family has the opportunity to plan for and preserve their legacy. And that's really what I love about what I do here.
oh, that's man. Well, it absolutely does matter, man, on a personal level and just with the folks that you're working with. Michael, is there any contact information or how can people connect with Trust and Wills? Again, if they don't come through me, if they don't want the discount, but how would they connect with Trust and Will and with you if you are inclined?
Yeah. So here's what I'll say. If you do want to build your own estate plan with Trust and Will, highly suggest that you do reach out to Courtney. He can provide you with a discount for 10% off. I believe that's what we have set up, right, Courtney? And
Mm-hmm.
he won't be able to view your documents, right? He's not going to be able to see all your info. This is really just a way for him to be able to say, hey, I want to help you out. I want to make sure that, this is even more affordable for you. So reach out to Courtney if you want to get started on this. I am not a client facing member of our team. I work to support mostly financial advisors, financial planners, and other financial professionals. So if you do want to build your own plan, I wouldn't be the best guy to reach out to. But if you do need assistance, while you're setting up your documents. We have a member support team. You can go ahead and talk to them via chat. I'll provide the phone number real quick, 866 908 7878 to talk with our support team, or you can email them directly, support@trustandwill.com. If anyone watching this wants to connect with me personally, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. My name is Michael Salazar, as it says right here below, and just search Michael
Mm-hmm.
Salazar, Trust and Will. You'll be sure to find me. If you want to have a conversation about Trust and Will or anything else regarding estate planning, would love to connect with you.
Oh, awesome, Michael. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, guys. The Trust and Will is such a accessible, modern way of making sure that your estate is locked in, taken care of, and you're protecting that generational wealth we're working so hard for. So this is Courtney Rollins with the Life in Transitions Experts Podcast, LITE. Let your light shine. Cheers.